Milei's first shot to replace peso with dollar. Argentina's government has announced it will slash the value of its currency, the peso, by more than 50% against the US dollar as its new far-right president seeks radical solutions to fix the country's worst economic crisis in decades. President Javier Milei's economy chief announced the painful measure on Tuesday, saying it was necessary for Argentina to avoid catastrophe. The devaluation would drop the peso's value from 400 to the dollar to more than 800 to the dollar, a blow to tens of millions of Argentinians already struggling to make ends meet. In the early 20th century, Argentina was one of the richest countries, wealthier, by some measures, than Germany, France, or Spain. But for decades it has been in economic decline, and has in recent years struggled with rapid inflation. While inflation is a major concern in many countries, including at a rate above 3% in the United States, Argentina's year-over-year inflation exceeded 124% as of September, according to official figures. In practice for Argentines, that has meant stockpiling food and household goods, because prices would probably be much higher the next time they went to the store. One Argentine told the Washington Post last year that he had enough shampoo for a year and a half. Another said she had at one point stockpiled 48 cans of tuna. The rapid inflation also means putting money away is fruitless, with inflation outpacing interest rates. More than 40% of Argentines live in poverty, according to government figures this year. The Argentine peso is the official currency in Argentina. But the US dollar is widely coveted and used there as a way around the rapidly decreasing value of the peso. Exchanging pesos for US dollars allows Argentines money to hold its value for longer, for spending or for saving. No one wants that repugnant paper that is the peso, because it is the currency issued by Argentine politicians, Milei stated. And that paper can't be worth even excrement because that garbage is not even good as fertilizer. Thereafter, he stated, with the increase in purchasing power through dollarization, people could save more. Argentines gave up on their peso long ago. They now hold some $200 billion in cash, second only to the cash holdings of US citizens. With expectations for 186% inflation over the next 12 months adding insult to injury, it is little wonder that Argentines increasingly support President Javier Milei, who has promised to dump the peso officially in favor of the US dollar. With dollarization, banks' deposits, loans, assets, liabilities, and capital are all redenominated from pesos to dollars at the conversion rate, which, for purposes of illustration, we assume to be 350 to 1. At a stroke, Argentina's firms and households will hold another $95 billion in dollar deposits, on top of the $17 billion they already have. Those who were obliged to pay principal and interest in pesos are now obliged to do so in dollars, and potentially at much lower rates. These new dollar-denominated debts are serviceable because local incomes are now earned in dollars. Banks will easily settle these dollar payments for goods, services, wages, and debt service among themselves because the redenominated stock of bank reserves lets interbank clearings work just as they did before. To the extent that the economy used bank money before dollarization, it can continue using bank money after dollarization. No liquidity from the BCRA is needed to achieve this conversion. Apart from bank reserves, the other liabilities of the BCRA are peso cash, $15.1 billion, and a variety of short-term instruments where the BCRA holds short-term government debt on behalf of the banking system, $61 billion. There are more than enough reserves to redeem the peso cash. No further liquidity is needed to redenominate the claims on government debt. After these operations, the central bank that remains is an entity holding dollar-denominated assets and dollar-denominated liabilities. The banking system faces no obstacles in expanding the money supply. Its lending activity now creates dollar deposits, which come out of circulation when dollar principal balances are amortized. However, if the volume of interbank payments expands along with the supply of bank money, increased demand for reserve money will increase short-term interest rates unless the supply of reserve money expands. If Argentine banks are connected to the U.S. interbank market, as they are in Panama, for example, the problem is self-correcting. High short-term rates in Argentina provide a lending opportunity for U.S. banks with excess reserves. Accordingly, an important post-dollarization role for the BCRA is to act as a conduit to the U.S. interbank settlement system as a kind of trusted central counterparty. The Federal Reserve needs only to assure itself of the BCRA's creditworthiness, while it devolves upon the BCRA to monitor the creditworthiness of the banks to which it is connected domestically. At the macro level, such flows between banking systems look like changes in the balance of payments. When U.S. banks lend reserves to Argentine banks, those banks give up a domestic claim for a foreign claim, which looks like a flow of investment into Argentina. The BCRA, standing in between the banking systems, receives a foreign reserve asset against which it issues domestic reserve money. Thus, changes in the monetary base correspond to changes in net foreign assets at the central bank, which in turn correspond to changes in the balance of payments. Flows of foreign reserves are not a problem to be solved in a dollarized regime. Instead, they are the mechanical consequence of connecting two interbank markets. With connected interbank markets, Argentine banks' reserve demand is met by the monopoly supply of reserve money by the Federal. This is, at bottom, no different than what happens for banks in the United States. Thus, a dollarized Argentina imports at the interbank rate of the United States, which essentially entails importing the Fed's monetary policy. The same connections to the supply of dollar reserve money enable two-way convertibility between reserves for dollar cash for Argentine banks and their clients. Missing from this picture is the government, which now spends dollars, collects dollar taxes, and borrows in dollars to cover its deficits. Its situation is similar to a U.S. state or municipality because it lacks the ability to create money by fiat, even as its budget is cast into dollars. To the extent the banking system will lend to the government, that is, by government debt, the supply of money can expand to support government spending. Otherwise, the government's ability to spend is strictly limited by its ability to collect taxes, and the appetite of international capital markets to underwrite its deficit spending. Dollarization in Argentina is not only feasible, but desirable. Even though the fiscal constraints imposed by dollarization might be a source of consternation for Argentina's politicians, they are a small price to pay for the monetary stability that has eluded Argentina for the entire 21st century.